Hello and welcome back to the ARK of E podcast. This is your captain's log for February 2023, and I am your captain, Noah Blanchard. I am flying solo, people, so be forewarned. I will try and be brief, but long enough to justify an episode this week. The captain's log, new semi-regular segment. This will be as regular as it needs to be. One of my goals for 2023 with the network is to, and this feed in particular, is to actually have an episode for you every single week on Wednesday. And I didn't have one ready to go. We've got some ongoing series. We'll talk about that in a moment. But, I'm filling in the weeks in between. And Gavin's been a bit busy, so I decided to jump on here and try something new for a bit. So the captain's log is going to be where you can find out about everything that's going on the site, the network at large, and also kind of a personal log of what I've been watching, listening to, reading, etc. So what's been going on the ARK of E in 2023? Well, on this very feed, we have two ongoing series, limited series, but ongoing. One is Rewinding Refn, which the second episode of just dropped this past week. Hope you enjoyed that. That's my solo hosted series, but features a lot of guests. And I'm covering the work of NWR, Nicholas Winding Refn, in reverse. So we started out with Copenhagen Cowboy, his new Netflix series. And just recently we talked Too Old to Die Young. That was actually kind of a flashback episode from when we originally covered it back in 2019. And our next episode for next month will be The Neon Demon. So if you're wanting to follow along, you should check that out. It is always available on Amazon Prime because they helped produce it. So check that out there. And of course, Too Old to Die Young, you can watch on Amazon as well. So check that out if you are so inclined. That's definitely a bit of an ask, but that's going to run throughout the year. On a more limited front, we've been riding on the Road to Reckoning. Gavin and I have. We're covering the Mission Impossible franchise, all 6 of them before Dead Reckoning Part 1 drops in July. So you're getting one of those the last Wednesday of every month. So next week you get kind of the stinker of the bunch, unfortunately. Kind of the only weak link in an otherwise rather flawless franchise. That would be MI2. From the year 2000. So tune in. It's a fun episode. Gavin and I have a fun time tearing it apart a bit and talking about how it was kind of the franchise operating on a bit of a knife's edge. You didn't know where it was going to go, and notably it had to go dormant for a little bit before they really kicked it back into high gear with MI3. So looking forward to that episode as well, where I believe Mr. Tim Niles is finally going to join us for an episode, and Mr. Brendan Reilly is going to join us for Rogue Nation and Fallout, so look forward to those episodes. And if you want to be on the Ghost Protocol episode, email me, thearkofe@gmail.com, and maybe we'll have a special guest if that's your favorite of the franchise. We have yet to book a guest, so let us know. All right, that's what's going on this feed, and we will check in soon as I can get Gavin back in studio to do our Oscar predictions. The Oscars are just a few weeks away, and that has become an ongoing tradition where we lay out our picks and then have absolutely no consequences for who wins, even though we always say we're going to. But maybe we'll correct that this year, because I think it's going to be a rather interesting ceremony. I'm actually looking forward to watching it, which is not always the case when it comes to the Oscars, but more on that on a future episode when Gavin rejoins us. Elsewhere on the network, the Bending Not Breaking crew has broken ground on Season 7, their final season featuring the original lineup of Mr. Sunshine Mayfield and Mr. Ben Pruitt. And they are working their way through the final season of The Legend of Korra. In the interim, Ben Pruitt killed it with an amazing run on the Dragon Pod, covering The Dragon Prince, which airs on Netflix. And he talked to so many of the creators, so they've got a lot of amazing guests lined up for you in the Korraverse, but this is them rounding out all of the Avatar-related content that has been released thus far, and we're going to see what happens next. But this will be Mayfield's last year with the pod, or last season with the pod, rather. He's a very, very busy man and has recently gotten married, so he will be moving on to bigger and better things, but will still check in with us every once in a while, and Ben will be maintaining the pod in some sort of capacity, but more on that when we have more to tell you. For now, I can tell you, go check out their Season 4 kickoff pod, where they kind of let you know what's going on with the final season. And then Episode 1, which is just the boys, no guest, to kick things off, which is entitled After All These Years, and they look at that through the lens of time. Highly recommend it. I do produce those episodes, and it is the most successful podcast in our network's history. We're very, very proud of it, proud to be a part of it, and we appreciate all of you amazing listeners for checking it out every single week. That's Bending Not Breaking. If you're not already following, go check it out. Alrighty. So, that's kind of all the current housekeeping as far as the pods go, but we are trying to bring you a good bit of content on the actual website. Those things still exist. You can go check them out. thearkofe.com. Two big things. We have our monthly Wrapped series, which will probably drop the first of every month, but we'll be kind of keeping a live log, similar, very similar to the vein of this episode. But that's mainly curated by Mr. Sunshine Mayfield. And it's just kind of a running log of what we saw within the month and ranked out for like what we thought was the best thing, not necessarily the worst thing, but just, our least favorite to most favorite thing of a given month. And that mostly is going to range just movies and TV, but we might throw in an album or something every once in a while. We're going to have fun with it. So if you're into reading, you can do that, thearkofe.com, and it's right there on the homepage. You can check that out. Just below that on the homepage is also the Nicolas Cage Challenge 2023. Also a new ongoing article series, blog if you will, from Mr. Sunshine Mayfield, who has endeavored to watch every single Nicolas Cage film under the sun, including the ones he has already seen, but he's going through all the blind spots. And yes, we are referring to all of the VOD trash. He's going to do it so you don't have to, and he is keeping a log of those as he goes along. We have a January update. He's seen a lot more movies since then. Keep an eye out for the February update coming very, very soon as I can update the article. But he's already found some gems, so I highly recommend it if you're a Nick Cage fan or a neophyte and you just want to start exploring. You can do that. It's going to be a fun time. I don't know why he took this on. I think it's a rather insane challenge, but he likes to do this. Last year it was all of the Star Wars content ever. I don't know that he actually completed that. Maybe we'll have to check in with him sometime. But I look forward to Mayfield hopefully joining me on the Neon Demon. But if you want to hear him elsewhere, of course, check in with Bending Not Breaking. And if you want to read what he's doing, check out the site. All right, that's pretty much it on the housekeeping front for everything that I can think of. So now I'm going to bore you, or try not to anyways, with what I've been watching. We're trying to give some structure to this. So just kicking things off for the year, my big rewatch was I went through the entire Mission Impossible franchise. I already plugged the show. Stay tuned. Like I said, those are dropping the end of every month. It's going to be a fun time. Super pumped for Dead Reckoning. Get on the road to Reckoning. So, after that, we'll stay in the rewatch category. I'll build up to the new stuff. I was in a cruise mood, so I revisited Minority Report, which is available on Amazon Prime right now. I won't say that seeing The Fableman's tail end of last year really put me in like a Spielberg mood, but I did immediately, I believe I caught like Catch Me If You Can towards the tail end of last year. I went back to a few that I hadn't seen in a bit. I tried to give Kingdom of the Crystal Skull another chance. Didn't really go over well. I thought maybe all these years later I'd feel differently. I felt a little more generous towards it, but not by much. Anyways, but the cruise of it all combined with the tail, that little bit of Spielberg love I had at me at the moment, led me to Minority Report, which holds up as a stone cold classic in my book. A movie I burnt out on DVD. This hit right at the perfect era. I remember of having that, and I believe the first Spider-Man, Sam Raimi Spider-Man, and just, it was almost like those two movies were just on a loop for a year as far as I was concerned. Okay, elsewhere on the rewatch front, Little Children, a very heavy one that I had not revisited in quite a while, and remembered a bit differently than it actually played out. This is, of course, Todd Field's second film. Any listeners of our 2x2 retro reviews or just recent episodes of this pod in general will know he is one of my favorite directors. His new film Tar is up for several Academy Awards. I look forward to seeing if it is able to clinch any of them outside of the obvious for Miss Cate Blanchett. Anyways, he is one of my favorite directors, and I had intentionally kind of not revisited this one because in my memory it was a one-and-doneer. It was so heavy, like why would you ever go back to that? But I'm glad I did, because it is one of those movies that, if you're on the wavelength with it, is very slyly funny, uncomfortably so, but very, very funny, very watchable, way more watchable than I remembered it. And while it, again, the magic of it is while it deals with some incredibly heavy themes, it's just, I don't know, it kind of feels light as a feather at the same time. Incredible performances across the board. And I did not dread going back to it. Now I'm oddly excited to see it again, even though, of course, In the Bedroom is a movie I watch like at least twice a year, which arguably is way darker and way heavier. So if you're in a field mood, or you just checked out Tar, I highly recommend checking out Little Children. I believe it's streaming on HBO Max right now. And of course, Tar is newly available on Peacock if you are a Peacock subscriber. So check out my second favorite movie of 2022. Moving further down the list, Blank Check is one of my favorite movie podcasts. If there's even a chance that you're listening to me, I'm sure you are aware of Blank Check, the podcast. Arguably the best movie podcast on the planet. Absolutely love them. They are currently covering Mr. Danny Boyle, so I am kind of following along. I'm not going to do everything, but revisiting some old favorites. I went back to Shallow Grave, which holds up quite well. I probably haven't seen that since I was about 13. Same with Trainspotting, which I definitely watched a bunch at the time, but had not revisited in forever. It manages to feel like a total time capsule movie, but still like as fresh as the day I watched it, and through an adult, quote-unquote, adult lens, is kind of a miracle of a movie. Another, if we're talking about tone, as far as Little Children was concerned, Trainspotting is the ultimate of how do you make a movie that's that dire and has some of that content in it, still manage to have this just like energy that, you know, is propulsive throughout and never dips too far into like, oh, this is so depressing, I gotta turn it off. It never becomes Requiem for a Dream somehow. So anyways, those were interesting rewatches. I'm very much looking forward to The Beach, which I believe will be this coming Sunday, so I will be revisiting that. Always a secret favorite of Gavin and mine's. Maybe we'll talk about it at some point. I'm surprised it hasn't come up on a 2x2 retro review, but we've kind of put that on hold, which reminds me, we have a 2x2 workaround for season 4, something different for you, specifically involving our 7-year anniversary. But I will save that for when Gavin's around, and we'll announce the lineup. Very excited. We're doing something similar. That's a weird teaser. Okay, back to the list. Use a guide, Noah. This is so weird when I don't have anybody to talk to. It's very easy to get lost. Back to the list. Men. A movie from 2022 that I wanted to revisit before I finalized my list. For a lot of the year, this was very high up there. And then I kind of arbitrarily bumped it down because I was like, I didn't have time to revisit it. Maybe it's not as strong in my memory. And I kind of wish I hadn't. Incredible film. Alex Garland. It's his third outing. Speaking of The Beach, he wrote the novel that The Beach is based on, and he's worked with Boyle before. What a perfect segue that I totally did not use. But okay, so Alex Garland, this is his third film after The Incredible Ex Machina and Annihilation, a film that I still need to go back and properly wrap my arms around. But Men, this was my second time through. It is streaming on Showtime now if you are a Showtime subscriber. Stars Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear, and it is a it's one of those movies I don't want to say too much about. The trailer definitely gives you the vibe, and is definitely not going to be for everybody, but contains imagery that I maintain I've never seen before and probably will never see again, and has completely stuck with me. It's one of those movies that I liked as it was going along, and then it just showed me something I'd never seen before and took it to a whole other level for me. Not for the faint of heart, may not like where it goes. Kind of wears its text on its sleeve. It's not the most subtle movie in the world, But I enjoyed the ride. Jessie Buckley is one of my favorite working actresses, and she's rather incredible in this, as is Rory Kinnear, who's always solid as well. Alrighty, further down the line, I rewatched the greatest concert film ever made, Stop Making Sense, which is streaming through AMC Plus, I believe. Trying to shout out where you guys can check out all this stuff. This, of course, is the Talking Heads documentary concert film directed by the incredible Jonathan Demme, and it is a masterpiece, and it holds up 110%. I've taken to ranking, or at least rating my rewatches of things the way I would a current movie to see how they hold up. And this one's still a stone cold 10 out of 10. I just wanted to say that. I'll highlight those as I get to them. I don't know if we have any more for this month, but that was definitely... Oh, excuse me, right after it, I followed up with the 1-2 punch, if you will, of Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. It is the 20-year anniversary, essentially, even though Volume 2 was broken out in 2004. It's the 20-year anniversary of the whole bloody affair, which still doesn't technically exist, but you can make it yourself. These movies both hold up incredibly well, and watching them, as I tend to do now, as kind of a massive 4-hour plus journey, is a very fun time. Volume 2 is probably the Tarantino movie I've seen the most, along with Jackie Brown. But and so I always kind of gave it a slight edge. This was right around right as it hit DVD, was right when I was quote unquote allowed to see Tarantino movies. One of the few directors my mom had ever been like, no, you gotta wait on those. You gotta wait a little bit. So, but yeah, something magical about that time. Volume 2, I've seen, upwards of 20 times probably, and held up. But I guess I tended to underrate Volume 1, but taken as a whole, oh, what an incredible piece that I feel like we don't really talk about anymore when it comes to Tarantino. I feel like that it kind of in between Jackie Brown and Inglourious Bastards, people seem to forget that there was some good stuff in there. Huge fan of Death Proof as well. Okay. Sword of Trust, a movie I've talked about before. I think it was on my long list for movies a couple years ago. The late, great Lynn Shelton directed a fantastic, just small little character movie. Mark Maron is kind of the main lead in there. Fantastic cast all around. It is, I believe, where did I watch Sword of Trust? I believe it is streaming through AMC Plus as well. Check it out on Prime if you missed it the first go around. Just a great small, a comedy that's not forced at all. Just very chill, very grounded, and a very interesting story that I don't want to spoil for you. But check out the trailer. It tells you the vaguest outline of where it's going. But again, it's not about, it's not a plot movie. It's not a plot movie. Sword of Trust. Check that one out. I revisited The Neon Demon. I won't spoil for you how I felt about it on my recent rewatch. We'll save that for the next episode of Rewinding Refn. Plug once again. Back to the man who kicked it off kind of for the year. Edge of Tomorrow, starring Mr. Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. Also known as Live, Die, Repeat, or what it should have been called all along, All You Need Is Kill. The rather remarkable. This movie hit when it came out, and it definitely, I feel like, has had some staying power, aside from the title confusion. But this is one of those, looking back at it, first of all, when it popped up on HBO Max, it was just like they're killing it with that range of movies from the last 10 to 15 years that I saw, liked, probably own, and have in a pile somewhere, which I do. I have Edge of Tomorrow on Blu-ray. But suddenly when I see it on a streamer, it's like, oh, that's the kick in the ass to watch it. So that's how that went. Rewatching it, this was one of those movies I was like, the fact that this was not in the 5 nominees that year for editing specifically is unfathomable to me. It is one of the most expertly edited movies, taking the concept of Groundhog Day and applying it to a sci-fi action adventure film is a great concept, but that concept could have, fallen flat on its face if it wasn't executed properly. And Doug Liman, and I don't know who the credited editor is on it, I don't have them in front of me, but shout out to whoever that was. You absolutely killed it. Great chemistry between the two of them, which is not always a guarantee when you have Cruise paired up with basically second lead, but Emily Blunt absolutely kills it. They have great chemistry between each other. Movie's consistently funny. a plot that you don't have to think too hard about, but just great energy. I would watch another one of these. Give me something else in this vein, bud. Whenever you're done with your franchises and like conquering the box office again. All right. Somewhat inadvertent, but I guess it's been a bit of I did unconsciously gone into Black History mode, but I rewatched Training Day, another one that dropped on HBO Max that I've seen a billion times, but I was like, you know what? Why not? And then I was in a Denzel mood, so Inside Man is over on Prime, and I rewatched that as well. And that put me in a Spike mood, and then I rewatched Malcolm X, which I recently got the Criterion edition of for Christmas. Thank you, Mom. And that was incredible. And then I did something I haven't done yet. I rewatched BlacKkKlansman, which listeners may know was my favorite film of the year it came out, which I believe was 2018. And I don't know if it's the stark contrast of that against Malcolm X, which I think is a undisputed 10 out of 10 masterpiece. But yeah, BlacKkKlansman, good movie, a borderline great movie that did not quite hold. I was maybe a little hyperbolic, and I don't know that I'll ever fully get over that theatrical experience, which was very memorable for anybody who knows how that film ultimately plays out, where it goes in its very closing moments. But separated from that, which I remember people at the time arguing that element of tying it to a real world event kind of dated the film instantly. And I remember not feeling that way in the theater, but a few years later, it is kind of you could have showed anything there at the end. And that's kind of even more upsetting, is like there was so much more to come. So some aspects of that, and then I could not get this out of my head, but Terrence Blanchard, who I normally love as a composer, I think is kind of phoning it in the back half of this movie, and I could not get it out of my head. There's kind of a repeating motif that just feels like we couldn't do anything else here, and it's just a little lackadaisical, a little low energy for that climax, which needs a little more juice to it, I would say. Still, great John David Washington performance, star-making in my eyes, and fantastic Adam Driver as well. And a genuinely funny script that I think holds up as still being very entertaining and contains one of my all-time favorite Spike sequences, which is the Too Late to Turn Back Now dance club montage, which happens about a half hour into the movie. Just great electric stuff that I will never forget. So yeah, that's it on the rewatch front. I will now move in to some new movies, and then we'll talk TV, and then we will get the hell out of here. How's that sound? Okay, I talked about it briefly, and I've written about it as well for the site, but Skinamarink was my first theatrical experience of the year, and one that is now available if you are a Shudder subscriber at home for everyone. And I've kind of noticed a debate. Sunshine Mayfield saw this and did not go for it at all. He saw it at home. And we kind of had the reverse debate where I was like, maybe I would have thought it was even more effective at home, and maybe he would have gotten more locked into it if he was in the theater. At this point, I don't know. And there are a few theaters around the country that are still doing, kind of like 1 week screenings of it, late night screenings, trying to kind of make it into a midnight movie sort of thing. But I think this movie is really going to live or die at home because of the isolated feel of it, what it's going for. And so I'm interested to see what more and more people think of it. I have said from the get-go, this is not for everybody. This is truly an experimental art film that got a semi-major release. 600 screens is semi-major, right? I mean, come on. The man made $1 million after spending $15,000. That's pretty remarkable. And who knows what he sold it to Shudder for. So, Kyle Edward Ball is the filmmaker. Skinamarink is the movie. It's not going to be for everybody. If you tap out, I don't begrudge you, but some of you may find one of the scarier movies or more effective movies you've seen in recent memory. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about it. You got to decide for yourself. This is not one I will give you a hard and fast thumbs up or thumbs down on. Still waiting to see what my brother thought of it, because he damn near shit his pants at the trailer. So we'll see. We'll see. Very excited. This tied in with Blank Check. I never caught Wendell and Wild from tail end of last year, and right before they got into Danny Boyle, they were covering Henry Selick. This, of course, was the kind of long gestating next Henry Selick thing, featuring Key and Peele, and also co-written by Jordan Peele, and It kind of came and went on Netflix. If you're a stop motion fan, I think there is some absolutely like astounding just technical work in this film. It's arguably a little overstuffed, but that's not a bad thing to me. Some great vocal performances. Angela Bassett in particular stands out, and of course Key and Peele themselves. The great Ving Rhames is fantastic in here, and I had a good time with it. I'm kind of not mad that I waited. I feel like if you watch this right around Halloween and we're wanting like, oh, I want like Nightmare Before Christmas vibes or something like that, like that's why I feel like maybe it didn't make quite as much of a dent as when they released it in October, but I'm glad I caught up with it. A little disappointed to see it didn't make the short list for Academy Awards, even though clearly I think it's Pinocchio and Del Toro's year. But Wendell and Wild, check it out if you want to. That's on Netflix. New to me, we talked about this on our Mission Impossible episode, the first one, Road Reckoning, in relation to De Palma. I had never seen Dress to Kill start to finish. One of his many lurid 80s psychosexual thrillers. This one starring Michael Caine, Nancy Allen, Keith Gordon, and Angie Dickinson. And I loved it. Again, late to the party, but just a great little sleazy thriller that's incredibly well shot and well paced, and one that unfortunately had been spoiled for me in some aspects, but it was good to know that, like, you know, you can still walk into a De Palma movie where you know most of the beats and still be just knocked out by the sheer bravura filmmaking. And that's what it was. Dress to Kill. Very good time. Chungking Express for Mr. Wong Kar-wai. I am my kind of background thing I'm working on for this year in terms of my movie watching is taking off some of the Sight and Sound films that I have not seen. Sight and Sound released their top 100 films of all time last year, and some things have shifted on the list, and so I'm trying to catch some. I've seen, I would say, probably about 25 to 30-ish, as I remember, of the top 100, so I was like, let's clear some blind spots. Wong Kar-wai is somebody I had only explored very, very briefly. I saw In the Mood for Love just recently, a couple years ago during lockdown, and was pretty bowled over by it. Incredible film. And a huge chunk of his filmography is actually available on HBO Max via Turner Classic or whatever kind of agreement they have with Criterion. So I checked out Chungking Express. This was his 1994 pseudo-romantic comedy. It's kind of genreless. That's kind of what I love about his stuff. But it's about two lovelorn detectives. Their stories are kind of told in vignettes, and I loved it. It just has a great energy, a feel, kind of a very unique just vibe all its own, and I look forward to checking out all of the other big ones from that period, which are all, like I said, available on HBO Max. So, but Fallen Angels is next on my list, and then we've got Happy Together, I believe, and a few others. But the great Tony Leung is in there. Some of you, I guess, would more now recognize him as the villain in Shang-Chi. So, if you want to go take a look back, their collaborations are very storied and very well regarded, so go do that. Other new things. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is my what I'm rooting for Best Picture. And I totally escaped me that Mr. Daniel Scheinert, one half of the Daniels, had solo directed a movie whose title had intrigued me and whose cast had intrigued me, but I had never quite gotten to. The Death of Dick Long is an A24 release, which is available on Showtime right now. And it is co-stars Andre Hyland. That's part of why I got into this. Huge fan of him as a comedian, and he has had some bit parts in some of my favorite indie movies in recent memory. Huge fan of his sequence in Relaxer, a movie that I absolutely love from a couple years ago. Joel Petrakis, where are you? Please make another movie. Okay, so Death of Dick Long follows two buddies, or three friends rather, but two buddies who have to cover up the accidental death of their buddy Dick Long. I won't tell you. I won't tell you any more than that. It is a very Coen Brothers with a twist sort of movie. It's that vibe, and I found it very funny and quite charming, and in that Daniel sort of way of being completely irreverent and like how are they getting the heart into something that is so patently absurd or ridiculous or gross, and he does it. Maybe not as like visually astounding, but it's not going for that. It's a different vibe. I see why it's not a collaboration between the two of them, but definitely has a lot of the DNA from Swiss Army Man and Everything Everywhere All at Once. So if you want a more of the Daniels, or at least one of them, go check out The Death of Dick Long. It was a pretty good time. I saw Infinity Pool in theaters. Wrote about it for the site. Mayfield enjoyed it as well. This is the latest from Brandon Cronenberg, starring Alexander Skarsgård and the incomparable Mia Goth, who is absolutely incredible in this film, as she is in everything. If you've seen the trailer, it gives it a nice little setup, but this is definitely one of those that is not for everybody, not a great date movie, and if you don't know what you're in for, you're probably going to leave the theater very upset. But if you knew what you were getting into, like myself and most of my friends, you had an absolute blast with it because it completely delivered. It's more approachable, I would say, just from a rewatchability standpoint than Cronenberg's prior movie, Possessor, which I also did revisit recently. Yeah, still one of those you gotta be in the mood for. But Infinity Pool is just as dark, but I think just a little more fun in its subversion and what it's kind of critiquing. So I had a great time with it. Some fantastic imagery. And again, another stellar performance from Mia Goth. Also really enjoyed Skarsgård and his continued commitment to just making himself as disgusting as possible on screen every once in a while. Just turning up the sleaze factor and the grossness. So check out Infinity Pool. It's playing currently in theaters, and as I understand it, the unrated cut will be making its way to VOD and Blu-ray very, very soon. I look forward to that. It, of course, originally received an NC-17, as apparently all Brandon Cronenberg movies will do. Okay. Speaking of NC-17 films, or just straight-up unrated films, I finally watched a movie that has eluded me for several years, rather notorious film from Japan, a co-pro with France actually, called In the Realm of the Senses. Some people may be familiar with this one. If you're not, I don't want to be the one to inform you about it. All I will say is it is I use heavy quotes in this, an erotic thriller from the 70s that is just walks the line between what is art and pornography, and is one of the most explicit films I've ever seen when it comes to sex. It'll make you blush and then some, and then make you so uncomfortable that you're like, okay, a movie can never shock me ever again. I'm not mad I had the experience. It's definitely one of those you constantly find in the 500 movies you must see before you die sort of lists, and I don't regret watching it, but I will never, ever watch it again. I will tell you that. In the Realm of the Senses. Enter at your own peril. Other new to me, but old movies, I had never seen, nobody had ever told me about a movie starring Clint Eastwood and a young Jeff Bridges called Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. I, of course, had heard the title, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, many a time, and never realized that it's basically a hangout movie with two legendary movie stars, one on the come up and one already very well established. And I had a great time with it. I don't know how it had escaped me, but glad I checked it out. Original music by Nilsson, I believe, Harry Nilsson. And just kind of two outlaws who kind of hook up and go on a series of adventures together, and like most 70s movies, it ends tragically and abruptly, and I was like, oh, I was having a good time, and then we just kind of take a huge nosedive in the last 15 minutes. But yeah, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, and I know a lot of people are like, it seems like you would have seen that many a time, considering a lot of the other things you talk about, but it had escaped me. It's available on Amazon Prime right now. Check it out. New in the theater, saw Knock at the Cabin 2 weeks ago now, the latest M. Night Shyamalan joint, and I enjoyed it. It was number one at the box office, and it took a steep drop to, I believe, the 5th or 6th slot this weekend. Not great word of mouth on this one, but I will give it some reasonable and solid word of mouth. I thought this was a better film than Old, a movie I think I thoroughly enjoyed in the theater, but I think just kind of completely falls apart in the third act. Has a huge third act problem. Knock at the Cabin does not have a third act problem in my eyes. It has just some general issues that have plagued, for me, a lot of the late period Shyamalan movies. A guy I'm always rooting for. We've talked about him here on the pod before. I grew up on these movies. I will never forget the theatrical experiences of The Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, even Up Through the Village. Just all unforgettable experiences. But I do remember also that The Village was the first time people actively turned on him in the theater. It was the first time I'd ever experienced that, and that's when I was first like, oh, maybe he's not for everybody anymore. Maybe he's just for me. And then he kind of completely burned that bridge, but he rebuilt it very quickly over the last couple of years. So Knock at the Cabin is based on a book called The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, I believe. And I was not familiar with the book prior. I know it was a bestseller, and some people have some issues with the changes to the book. I won't talk about all of those here. What I will say, I think the movie's worth seeing, whether you go in the theaters or catch it very soon when it drops on VOD, for one main reason, and that is an absolutely incredible performance from Dave Bautista, arguably the best of his career thus far. And I think kind of does go in that pantheon of Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, Melly Mel, say what you will, in Signs, as just kind of iconic lead Shyamalan performances. I think he's amazing in this movie and kind of a pleasure to watch. I can't say that for every member of the cast, and I don't want to harp on anybody here, but there are some that kind of left me wanting. One in particular, which is also very crucial. I feel like people are going, if I tell you this is the best thing he's done in a while, you're going to be disappointed by it. If I tell you it was a good time, you may think I bait and switched you, but I think it's worth checking out. But you'll know where you currently stand with Shyamalan these days. So, that's Knock at the Cabin. Moving along, this past weekend, the big Valentine's Day weekend release, which came out number one with a scant $8.9 million, Magic Mike's Last Dance. Now, I kind of, we could try and call him. We'll give it a shot. We'll see what he's doing. If he doesn't answer, we'll breeze right through this. I saw this with my buddy Brendan Reilly. Hold on just a moment.
LB.
What's up, buddy?
What you doing?
I'm recording a podcast. You're live on the air.
Oh, hey guys. What is up?
So I'm doing a solo pod, and I was going through what I've been watching, what I saw recently. I just talked about Knock at the Cabin, but I was about to get into Magic Mike's Last Dance, and I was like, let's call the dude I saw him with, get his 2 cents. So
I'm happy to add my 2 cents.
Okay, so I'm gonna here. I think we've got. Let's see how well you're coming through here. Talk for a second. We'll do a little live mic check.
Check. 1 2 1 2.
All right, I think we can hear you pretty good. So yeah, let's start with Knock at the Cabin. I gave my brief rundown of it. Give your capsule review real quick, and then we'll talk Magic Mike.
Yeah, man. I mean, you and I talked about it afterwards, and we both enjoyed it. One of us enjoyed it a little bit more, but nonetheless, I did like it. I thought that was probably Batista's best performance that I've ever seen from
Agreed.
him.
Yes.
What was probably the biggest twist for me was the fact that there was no twist. M. Night Shyamalan's known for his underlying thing that's going on, his underlying message or his underlying twist, or you're trying to figure out this movie the whole time. But this movie was pretty predictable, and it stayed suit the whole time. You know?
Similar to Signs, in as much as that's another movie where it's like it's the twist in Signs. Spoiler alert for an almost 20-year-old movie. Nope. Whoa. Yeah.
Roughly. Yeah.
The twist in Signs is that God exists. that God is real, essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, not to, I mean, I guess spoilers for Knock at the Cabin, but you kind of maybe were already assuming this, but it's very much in that same vein. I won't spoil it for people, but it's essentially like, hey, the thing you think might be happening, like it's happening. All right.
It actually is happening, right? Because there was probably about 45 minutes of the movie, maybe an hour, 45 minutes, whatever it is, where I'm like, all right, cool, I'm waiting for the floor to be taken out. Where is this actually going to go?
Yeah, because
we were already on the train. We were already going.
Right. Well, it's one of those movies that works its way toward, and if you're engaged with it, you're like, okay, well, there's only 3, maybe 4 possibilities for how this can play out, and so you're just kind of like, which one are they going to pick? And so maybe it's a little like dramatically inert in that way, where you're just kind of like, all right, well, just how's it going to wrap up? But I think, again, Bautista is kind of like what carries you through even those moments where you're like, I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, I already liked Bautista. I don't know if too many people look at him as like a serious actor. You know, he's one of those
I think he's officially. Yeah, I think he's officially moved into, like, you know, yeah, people take him seriously.
But for me, and I was a Bautista fan before, but I think that this performance showed me another side of him where I'm like, oh, he's got range. You know, I didn't know that he had that capability.
Did you see Blade Runner?
Like, oversell it, and people be like, well, you know, whatever. But nonetheless, his performance was really good.
Agreed. Did you see Blade Runner?
Did I see what?
Blade Runner 2049.
I did.
I feel like that was it's very brief in that, you know, 2-hour 40-minute movie, but I feel like that was the first time people were like, oh, Dave Bautista, like, okay, that was an interesting use of him. And then just like since then, he's steadily just been putting in interesting work in a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, so, and here's the thing, the new Blade Runner, I remember it, but not enough to comment on his performance in that.
I gotcha. So we both kind of agree. See it for Bautista.
Fun.
Yes.
It was a good time. I liked how, you know, you pretty much dive right into the action, and it's just it's such like a slow. I don't want to say slow build, right? But like the terror up front is not so terror because they're not like trying to be terrifying, if that makes any sense. You know,
right.
You've seen the movie, and I'm not trying to spoil anything. But they jump right into the action, and it's good, and it kind of stays consistent the whole time. I enjoyed the movie. At the end of it, you know, you had to spell out the underlying ethos, if you will, to the movie.
Well, the movie graciously does that for you as well. But I had to restate it to you.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, I didn't get that. And you're like, what do you mean you didn't get it?
Yeah.
But nonetheless, good movie, great performance by Bautista, and it's not your typical twist of an M. Night Shyamalan movie that I was expecting.
Word. All right. So yeah, a general like go see it from Brendan and Noah.
Sure.
I think we're a little more divided on the next one.
100%.
The third outing in the fantastic trilogy, Magic Mike's Last Dance. It was number 1 at the box office. I don't know if you saw that.
I did not see that.
It only made like $8.9 million, but it was still number 1.
How much?
Like 8.9, didn't even crack 10, but it was number 1 nevertheless. I loved it. You thought it was okay.
It was okay. I mean, it was solidly okay. You know, and I don't know how much you do or don't want me to spoil here, so
I don't think it's.
I say anything.
I don't think it's a very spoilable movie.
True words, no, I don't think
so just spoilers. Magic Mike is in this movie, and he does in fact perform a last dance. Okay, just wanted to clarify that for anybody who was wondering. He does in fact perform his last dance.
You know everything I told you, man. Like the movie had a good build up to what I thought was going to be a good plot, if you want to say that Magic Mike didn't even really have a deep plot, but nonetheless, you go to these movies for fun. You go to these movies for excitement. You go to the movies just to like zone out and just watch people party and have a good time, right? And then this guy makes some money and he kind of does this wholesome thing of building furniture on the side. And you're like, you know what? I can back this guy. He's trying to do something good. He's trying to build his own business, and he might not love what he does, but he's a good dude and he makes money partying. Like, we can all get behind that, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what you see in this next one. You know, I mean, I guess kind of, but they try to make it so much of a love story, and I could not buy the love story. You know, you and I talked about that. I could not buy the chemistry.
I was so into it.
Their chemistry, it just felt off. It felt weird. Like the dance at the very end was awesome. Like that was probably one of the best dances out of all the movies. Don't get me wrong. One of
the best. I will flat out say it. I'm sure people will argue with me, but no, for my money, one of the best dance scenes in like modern movie history. I mean, you can keep all your like classic MGM musicals and stuff, but like it's incredible. Yeah.
Money. Yeah, I would go back to the movies just to watch that dancing.
I would too. I mean, when it inevitably pops up on HBO, I will be revisiting 3 scenes, which is the montage of hiring the dancers, probably his the opening dance for Selma, which I will also probably like put my own soundtrack over because I kind of hate that music cue and it goes on way too long. But and then I will rewatch that the final Mike dances in the wet set. Is incredible, dude. It's so good. So
yeah, it was awesome. But like, they based this whole movie on these two falling in love, and I just never once felt the chemistry. And as I'm watching this dance and these flashbacks, I'm like, I just don't buy it. So it was tough for me to like actually dive in like you did. And when he says I love you, I'm like, for what? You've known each other for 2 days.
You said, to be fair, he was like, known her for like 2 days. I was like, dude, he's been there for a month. He's been there for a month, Brendan.
Some people fall fast. A month still feels quick.
Hey, just remember, as Tavares taught us, it only takes a minute, girl, to fall in love.
Well, you haven't watched Californication yet, but the guy's dad there says 10 minutes for 10 years. I've loved them all.
Okay.
But yeah, so, but it does have the sparks, some of the sparks. I do wish that they brought the whole band back together.
Yes, that is a spoiler, but I also think something worth knowing if you were on the fence about going to see the movie, that was the only letdown for me, is like that you don't get the crew, which in retrospect, it's like XXL is the crew movie. Like, it's the hanging out with the dudes movie, which is why I think I come out of it now, and if we're ranking them, it's 2-1-3. It's 2-1-3.
2-1-3. Without a doubt. I mean, it's 2-1, and then I would like to put 3 in a whole other universe that doesn't coincide with that one.
I like it, but again, I am a.
Smack now. I didn't hate it that bad. It wasn't the other two,
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I always feel like I have to put this as a caveat. I am so in the bag for Steven Soderbergh that his movies like start at an 8 for me. And very few of them ever dip below that, because I love what he does so much. Anyways, so yeah, we were a little more divided, but you know what? We still had a great time at the movies, because that's what it's about.
We always do.
So are we gonna go see Marlowe tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so.
The new Liam Neeson, Philip Marlowe movie. They're doing a film noir out of nowhere. Maybe it'll be good.
You say Marlowe, and I'm over here like, am I supposed to know this already? I don't think that I've heard of Marlowe yet. Now that we're talking about it, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's a weird one that they're releasing it like the day before Ant-Man, I think, just because they're like, hey, maybe some old people will want to go see this, but
Is it going to be another one like The Train and Taken, and where he's
No. That's why I am actually interested in this one, because no, it's not old man action, it's old man detective, like LA 40s film noir. We'll see. I'm gonna go watch the trailer and see if it's worth going to. If not, I guess you and I are seeing Quantumania.
We're going to see Quantumania
as our next
on Thursday, and I will let your viewing, listening population know that is more of a me thing at this point.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll actually record in person so people don't have to put up with your weird phone audio. But yeah, we'll let you know what we thought of whatever we go see next. Is it bad
right now?
Say what?
Is it bad right now?
I mean, it sounds like it's going to be okay to me as long as people can hear you. And that's why it's also just a brief little segment of this episode, which I'm about to end very, very soon. But,
do go see the movies, though, especially Knock in the Cabin. Knock in the Cabin is worth a watch. Magic Mike, if you're expecting the other two, it's not going to be the other two.
Yes, temper your expectations. Yes. Yeah, temper your expectations with both of those, and you'll have a great time.
And you'll have a great time. Noah and I are going to go check out Marlo tomorrow, maybe, and then we'll definitely hop on for Ant-Man. I'm a big Marvel guy, so I can sit there and talk about that all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we'll do that and talk about just the current state of the MCU and how we're feeling about it these days, because we haven't really
cracking all over the place.
We haven't really addressed that on the network. I'm sure everybody's waiting for us to weigh in.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyways, so thank you to Mr. Brendan Reilly for guesting, and I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up while you're here on the phone with me, and then you and I can keep talking.
I'm going to take over your mic for a second and let everybody know to come back for the Mission Impossible segments that we're going to be doing. Noah, being the guy he is, he always gets us motivated, and I actually just went back and watched the whole series over the past 2 weeks, and it did not disappoint, and so I'm excited to talk to y'all when that gets around.
Dude, I love the energy. This is now officially the 4th time that has been plugged on this episode. Anyways, so yes, Brendan, I already said that you will be joining us for Rogue Nation and Fallout. We're looking forward to those episodes. So yeah, come with us on the road to Reckoning, and stick around for more reviews and another one of these Captain's Logs sometime in the future. Until next time, I have been Noah. Thank you for listening.